Crazy. Hi, everybody, and welcome. We're all going. And welcome to yet another episode of Witches and Wine. This is the show where we talk about witchy stuff and we drink wine. I almost didn't have my wine. Clink and drink, and clink and drink to our guests, which I'm very, very, very excited about. And I gotta taste this. Oh, have I had this before? This is very different. Yeah. You're going to talk about this, and
yep.
Yeah. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Lola Stardust. I am a third-degree high priestess of Children of the Crossroads ATC in Spokane, Washington.
And I'm Silas Stardust, the high priest of said coven.
And we like to do a little disclaimer for those that tune in. It has been brought to our attention at times that sometimes people don't want to learn about witchcraft or hear about it or watch it when there's wine being drank because they're like, you guys get a little tipsy and a little loose-lipped. And we get it. We understand, even though wine is in the title, so you kind of know what you're going to get. But if you do not enjoy watching that, you have the magic and the power to just click on the X in the corner of your screen and we disappear.
Boom, we're gone.
We're gone. We don't want you to disappear. We want you to stay with us, but
you have that power.
You have that power. Freedom of choice. Freedom of choice. It's a Devo song. So you like the little robot that I did? It's a very Devo dance. Yeah. I don't know. Before we talk to this awesome person, I want to turn the wine discussion over to this awesome person, Silenus.
Yeah.
Tell us what the wine is.
So today we have gone with Lola's favorite grape, and we've gone with a Malbec, but we've done a Grand Reserva from Phebus. And what makes this different is most Malbecs are aged anywhere from 6 to 12 months. Maybe occasionally you'll get one 18 months. But to get to a Grand Reserva status, you have to be barreled for at least 2 years. So 2 years in there to get that Grand Reserva status. And so it's going to have a lot more oaking. The tannins are going to be silkier, longer. This has got big cherry notes in it. You're going to get some violet and floral notes. Very velvety. Deep, dark, luscious.
Oh yeah. The after. I just got the after. What do you call that? The tail end.
Yeah. And then you're also going to get a little bit of licorice notes, and that's where when you know a wine has been aged for a long time is when you start to get into those deep, earthy notes. You get those sometimes licorice. You get sometimes tar, sometimes forest floor. They sound weird, but when you taste them, you know that the wine has been able to evolve to get where it needs to be fully. Releasing all the flavors that can come from the grape.
It's earthy.
Yep. Bigger price point than usual for a Malbec. You're going to pay about $30 for this bottle. Not that 15 to 20 range that Malbecs are known for giving you a really high quality bottle, but not at an expensive price point. But with that extra aging, it's well worth it. And with this one being done in French oak, you're going to get some vanilla notes on the finish as well.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's very complex.
Like our guest.
Oh,
I'm very complex.
Come on, we're trying to hype you up, man.
Yeah, we're hyping you up.
I don't want to build an expectation and then
it's the expectation is you're just you and awesome and humble.
Yep.
Unlike me, I am egotistical and drunk. No, I'm kidding.
I gotta say that explanation of wine was like way on point. As somebody who goes to Napa with some frequency, and on vacation we always visit wineries. That was excellent.
He did this for a living for a while.
I sold wine for a long time.
Yeah, so he's very good at it, and that's we try to make our show a little different than other witch shows by educating you on the wine that we're drinking. And he's actually cataloging all the wines we've had, all the shows, and we're thinking of doing something with that. I don't know what, but something like the wine with the guest or the wine with the topic. Kind of, it's kind of gonna be cool.
I like it. I like it.
So speaking of complex and drunk, no, just kidding. I want to introduce our guest. If you don't know who he is Jason Mankey. He's an author. He's a speaker. He's a lover, not a fighter. He's Jason Mankey. Welcome to the show.
He's amazing.
Thank you for having me. I'm like blushing. He's amazing. That was so nice. I wish my wife would say things like that, you know?
Well, we love our guests, and we love that you are a return guest. So for those watching, you can catch the first interview we had with him. It was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Delightful.
I think it was during pandemic.
I think it might have been during damn panic.
Damn panic.
I called it
We all had a lot of time. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jason, you just got back from Italy.
That's right.
Yeah, like seriously, like a few days ago, right?
I got back on Thursday. My wife and I had left 3 weeks before that, so it was a long 3-week vacation. We were celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary,
Congratulations!
Which was really the reason for going, because nobody thought we'd make 20 years, especially me. So it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and where did you go?
We started in London, which of course is not Italy, but we always have friends in London, so we love going back. And there's always something more to see and do there. And then we went to Venice, which is where we were for the anniversary itself. We went to Florence and then Rome, and we also spent a night in Naples so we could visit Pompeii.
Very cool.
Wow, Pompeii. I have always been. So what is that? I mean, what is that like? It's got to be pretty intense, kind of weird energy.
The first thing about it is it's huge. I don't think people realize how big it is. It's like miles big. You couldn't walk through all of Pompeii in a day. I mean, it was a pretty large city back in its day, and today they've excavated a great deal of it. So when you're there, if you're there for 2 or 3 hours, you probably don't get to see everything. And I don't think that we saw everything. But we saw a lot of it. You know, there's things that are very well preserved at Pompeii, and you can really imagine what it was like amongst the ruins. I think even more impressive, though, was Herculaneum, which was a much smaller city, but because of the way that it was buried, there are parts of the original wood that are still there, and the original wood isn't in Pompeii anymore. But you know, you get to see what the buildings look like. Some of the frescoes are still visible, which is really incredible.
That's cool.
That's crazy.
Every home had a little small shrine or altar, often built into the wall, and those are the Lares, and we knew that they were there. And we had a tour guide, and we're asking him about it, and you could like see his face light up because most people aren't really familiar with that. And so for us, it was like we want to take pictures of that like the whole time that we were there, because for us, you know, exploring how these people worshipped and how they practiced was a really important part of our trip.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The energy there, does it feel touristy, or do you feel like, I've never been to a place where so many people, like a catastrophe has happened. So I've never been to anything like that. Was the energy kind of sad? Was it, or I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Everything in Italy is over touristed. So we got there right when it opened, which was nice because for maybe 30 minutes, we could walk down a street in Pompeii and not really have anyone around us.
Yeah.
Within an hour of our trip, you know, you could see the city gradually filling up. And, you know, if you wanted to walk through one of the houses or whatever, you would have to walk through lots of other people, especially when you're trying to see the things that people want to see in Pompeii, like the surviving frescoes, if there was a statue somewhere, that kind of thing. So it's really crowded. There's a lot of energy. I didn't really get a sense of sadness. I've been able to travel a lot the last 10 years. I remember when my wife and I visited Athens and we went to the Acropolis. And the Acropolis is probably in better shape than the Colosseum in Rome. Even though when you look at them, you might not think that because the Colosseum has been rebuilt in many places, so it looks more put together. But I just remember how sad I was at the Acropolis, and I could feel kind of the sadness because the gods had been pillaged in those situations, right? Like all the marble had been taken away from the pagan temples and built on churches and things. And in Pompeii, everything just stopped. And certainly there's sadness from the people who died. There's a place in Herculaneum down near where the seashore would have been, because Herculaneum used to be up near the sea, but the volcano has changed things over the centuries or whatever. But when they were originally excavating Herculaneum, they couldn't find any bodies. So they thought that everybody had gotten away. And then eventually they're excavating where the seashore was, and that's where they found all the bodies, because people were trying to hide in this place, but all of this like mud and debris is coming down, and then on the other side of them there's a giant tsunami. So they were essentially trapped, and that's where they died.
Yeah.
And if you go through there, you can see the skeletons that have fossilized.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, if you find my Facebook or Instagram, there are pictures of that there in like one of the videos that I put together. But that's tragic. You can feel those echoes.
Oh gosh, that would be
those are very real.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about Pompeii, though, is because those people were literate, we know a lot about them. You know, this house belonged to this person. So there's an immortality to some of these individuals that maybe they would not have achieved without the volcano blowing up. And it's still sad that the volcano blew up, because, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of lives were lost during that. But, you know, people say the names of the bakers who lived in places, or a couple of ex-slaves who put together a very successful brothel, right? I mean, we know their names, and this is where they lived, and this is what their life might be like.
Wow.
And I'm guessing that those ghosts and those echoes really appreciate that and probably find some irony in it all these centuries later.
Well, they're immortalized, and that's kind of, you know, that's cool that can be so honoring that passing of them and knowing who they were, putting a name, you know, to what, you know, the face or the passing. So what else did you do in Italy? Did you drink a lot of wine?
We drank a lot of wine. We were really disappointed in all the Instagram videos we had watched beforehand, though, because they always said you'll be able to find these great cheap wines in Italy, and not where we were. They don't sell cheap wine to tourists.
Yeah, no, you have to get in the neighborhoods and outside of the big touristy areas, and then you find phenomenal wines for just a handful of euros. But in the big city areas, in the touristy areas, oh no, it is jacked up.
Yeah.
We drank a lot of really great wine. And some of it really wasn't too expensive. I mean, I live in California's Bay Area, so everything's expensive here. So a good bottle of wine for 20 or 30 euros is really not a bad deal. But we were led to believe we would probably be able to pick up like a gorgeous $9 or €9 bottle of wine somewhere, and we never quite found that.
Yeah.
But the wine was good, and we drank a lot of it. And we also went to 4 wineries during our trip. While we were in Venice, we took a day trip and went out into Tuscany and visited 3 wineries, so 2 of which were really good.
So lots of Sangiovese.
It was Montepulciano is really where we ended up going, and another wine that was very similar to Montepulciano. It has like a similar name. But I learned a lot about how they harvest some of those wines. They have what they would call the green harvest, where you have to get rid of about 50% of the crop before it's ready, and you just cut it off the vine and then let it fall, because you want to put all the energy into the remaining grapes. So their premium wines were like that, and that was something I had not heard of before. But the wine was great, and we went to mostly small vintners, you know, people doing 8,000-9,000 bottles in a year, which is actually not that many bottles.
Not at all. That's just a couple barrels.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
You were going to say something about certain wines, or?
Well, Montepulciano is one of those weird ones. We've had a couple of bottles on the show. It's a region and a grape, but the grape does not grow in the region. It's a really odd.
Right.
Yeah. There's a Montepulciano region, and it uses a lot of Sangiovese grapes from there.
We were in the region. We didn't have the grape. We were in the region.
Your Tuscan wines are your kings of your Sangioveses. So that's where a bunch of the really nice quality Sangiovese comes. But then you go a little bit further south, and then you get down to where the Sangiovese grape grows, and it's just an odd combination that it has, or not Sangiovese, but the Montepulciano.
Yeah.
It's a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo over in the Abruzzo.
Right.
Region. Yeah, and so it's one of those fun, weird wine facts.
That's cool. I love that you guys are talking about wine. My husband's kicking it with Jason Mankey talking about wine. I love it. It's awesome.
Our 4th winery was on Mount Vesuvius, which was really fascinating. And I can't remember the grape there because, well, I had a lot of wine, and there was a lot going on that day.
Was it Aglianico?
Oh man, I'll let you know in the future because my wife knows. I could probably consult all the pictures I have on my phone, but that seems like a lot of work. But you can really taste the minerality from the volcanic soil. Right. So it was a completely different experience than really any other kind of wine I've had before. And I really enjoyed it. I like that kind of flavor in a wine. But also just to sit somewhere and look up and see Mount Vesuvius, right? And knowing that you're on the slope of Mount Vesuvius and you're drinking wine. I mean, that's a dream come true.
That's, oh my God, there's nothing like that.
Yeah, that would be a lifetime memory.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love that. Did you, so you got to go to wineries. There was some pagan stuff you said that you've seen and saw in Italy. What kind of pagan-y stuff did you get to see?
Usually when I travel, I want to go to things from pagan antiquity, right? So there are things from pagan antiquity that you can see in Italy, but really when people go to a lot of Italian cities, what you're seeing is stuff from the Renaissance. Venice and Florence really are Renaissance cities in a lot of ways. The core of those cities was built during the Renaissance. And what people forget is the Renaissance had its little pagan moments too. That's when the gods came back after sort of being, I wouldn't say asleep or dormant, but less popular, less figures of art. And then all of a sudden, during the Italian Renaissance, you see more and more images of the gods. And we could argue whether or not the gods are being worshipped. But my thought is, if you're making a statue of a god, you're worshiping that god, whether you're intentionally doing it or not. Or if you're Botticelli and you're painting the birth of Venus, I would say that you're worshiping Aphrodite, whether you're consciously worshiping Aphrodite or not. So for me to see those pagan remnants from the Renaissance was a real highlight, and Botticelli's Birth of Venus was one of those highlights for me. Just an absolutely huge painting in real life. We see pictures of it on TV or on the internet or whatever. Doesn't do it justice. It's absolutely huge. The color, the detail is much, much more vivid in person. And it was something that my wife and I just wanted to sit down and worship, right? I mean, that was, wow, that's so great. So to see those things up close was really great. We also, when we were in Rome, we stayed near St. Peter's, which is the Vatican. And the Vatican, if you go to their museums, they have some of the finest pagan statues left in the world from antiquity. Mostly Roman, but those Roman statues are basically copies of earlier Greek statues. And when we were going through the museum, we were in awe of those statues. Next day, we go to St. Peter's Basilica, which is where all the Christian stuff is. And it's beautiful and makes you wonder how many people they could have fed had they not chosen to be this ostentatious. But as you're looking at those statues that are supposed to be saints or popes or whatever else, most of which were created in the late part of the Italian Renaissance, you realize something. They were basically just copying the pagan statues. And you can see Athena's face on some of them. You can see the face of Diana or Artemis on some of them. Here's Moses, but it's really probably not Moses. Looks to me like you ripped off Poseidon pretty hard. While my wife and I are touring St. Peter's, we're like, look, that looks like that god. I mean, to me, just that was much cooler.
That's, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I hear they build the Vatican over a bunch of pagan stuff or
pagan churches,
and that's kind of what I've heard, but I don't know.
So many things have been borrowed from ancient paganism. With the Catholic and Christian churches that.
You're always never surprised when I meet a witch that's like, oh, I'm a recovering Catholic, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Recovering Catholic.
I think for a lot of it is when artists were looking for inspiration, there was a 1,000-year period where no one's doing fine sculpture at all. But then they unearth all of these pagan things, and it's like, wow, this is what we aspire to do. So that became the template for what they were doing. When all of a sudden the Renaissance started. And there's also there's some gardens in Florence, and they have ancient pagan statues in them because the people who owned the garden and had all of the money, they knew what beauty was. And nothing expresses beauty more so than Aphrodite or Cupid. And so
Right.
all of these pagan statues are in this garden that was essentially created by Christians. And
Yeah.
some of them, again, are statues that date back to ancient Greece or ancient Roman period. And they're just sitting outside and had been for hundreds of years, which is really kind of neat to see because we're used to just seeing statues in museums.
Yep.
Right. So to see a statue surrounded by trees or flowers, I think made the statue look much more realistic and made me just, my little pagan heart sing a little louder than it usually does.
I feel like those statues, statuettes and that kind of those carvings and stuff, I feel like they belong out by the plants and the flowers and the trees, and that's what makes it so beautiful. And you were going to say something?
Well, I was curious, since you just came back from over there, is the witch aesthetic really hot over there too, where you're seeing it a lot more present like we've seen here in the States recently?
Yes, I think it's very much there. And the gardens that I'm talking about are the Boboli Gardens, and I felt like I had to say that. It's really
oh yeah, okay.
But yes, yeah, I would say the witch aesthetics there. We were there with another couple, and Gwian Raven and Phoenix LaFay, who also write really great books and are good friends of ours. And Phoenix owns a witchy shop, so every city that we were in, she wanted to find the witchy shop, and they were everywhere. But also, you could see Halloween creep in everywhere too.
Oh yeah.
Halloween is not an Italian holiday, but
no,
there were instances where people were decorating for Halloween, and there were signs sort of advertising Halloween, and they all had witches. And then we found an ice cream chain called Strega with the big witch on it, and we bought most of our gelato there while we were in Italy because we had to, right?
Well, yeah.
You could walk into like a little cheapo touristy shop selling trinkets, and they would have tarot cards for sale. So yes, I think the witchy aesthetic very, very popular in Italy. And Italy, like a lot of Europe, is not particularly religious anymore.
No.
The amount of people who go to Catholic churches is very, very small.
Yeah.
So people are looking for something else, and why not witchcraft?
Well, you bring up Halloween, and I know that you love talking about Sabbats and the history of them. Let's talk about Halloween coming up. Let's talk about Samhain. First of all,
excuse me, it's Samhain.
It's Samhain.
I can read.
Oh, I gotta go. I'm out. I'm out.
I love scary movies, and I love like the Halloween movies, right? And I remember the first Halloween with Michael Myers, and the doctor calls it Samhain.
Yeah, the night of Samhain.
The night of Samhain, the night of the witches, and I'm just like, oh.
In fairness, back then, a lot of people had never heard these words actually pronounced, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's why the word athame or athame has 8 different pronunciations in the United States.
Athame, athame, yeah.
A thame.
Yeah. You say potato, I say athame. Yeah, that kind of
thing. I'm sure Samhain was like that. People were trying to do their best, but boy, did they mangle it pretty hard.
It's like Hecate. Is it Hecate? Is it Hecate? I've heard it Hecate. I've heard Hecate. It's they know that we're our intent is to honor them. Mispronouncing it doesn't, it's not that big of a deal, but
I think if they were really mad at our pronunciations, they would let us know.
Yeah, exactly. So Samhain, let's talk about it. Where does a lot of these traditions come from? Now, I've heard that some of it, like the costumes and the masks and stuff, comes from people wanting to I've heard 2 things. Either they want to blend in with the creepy crawly ghosts that are going around, so people disguise themselves as so they can fit in, or it was to scare off something. So where does that tradition come in? The costumes and the
gourds.
I would say both of those theories are probably wrong. I find that the tradition of wearing costumes really fascinating, because if you go back and you look at early reports of Halloween, there was no dressing up. right? That seems to be an American thing that we invented kind of later. Now, there is a long tradition of dressing up for other holidays.
Yeah.
Most specifically, Yuletide holidays, not necessarily always on Christmas or Christmas Eve, but during the weeks before and after Christmas, there's a long history of dressing up. In the United States, people used to dress up in costumes for Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And that was up until the 1920s. You stories of kids dressed up as cowboys going door to door to businesses, not homes, asking for Thanksgiving treats.
Yeah.
Now nothing's open on Thanksgiving and we all dress up on Halloween. And I think Halloween just sort of became a receptacle for holiday traditions that we didn't want to put anywhere else. So if we're going to if we want to dress up in costumes, it doesn't work at Christmas or Yuletide anymore, doesn't work at Thanksgiving, let's give it to Halloween. And then also Halloween was traditionally a night of pranks, right? Yes. The idea that if you don't give me something, I might do some vandalism. Yeah. And even before that, trick or treat, the first instance of that particular phrase written down doesn't show up until 1939, I think. And we think of this as something that people have probably been doing for hundreds of years.
But not really.
It's probably something that people have been doing for 100 years.
Yeah.
But before that, people did go out and create mischief on Halloween night.
Okay.
And petty vandalism. And if you're going to be a vandal, it probably made sense to dress up a little bit and put something over your face.
Disguise yourself. Yeah.
And then the idea of the jack-o'-lantern or the carved gourds was you put a candle in it and it was to scare off at that point because it was supposed to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Is what I have read.
We've read all sorts of stuff. So,
there's a lot of, sort of people who aren't sure exactly what that signifies. I've read in Catholic areas it might signify a soul stuck in purgatory, because you're also looking at a time that's very close to All Souls and All Saints days, those particular holidays. Mm-hmm. There's definitely something in the air in late October, early November that tends to revolve around death. We know that the first people who celebrated what we call Samhain, the Irish Celts, it really wasn't a celebration of the dead. It was often more it was mostly like, we're really scared of the Fae. How can we keep the Fae away? And if you read any sort of mythology about Samhain from Celtic stories in Wales or from Ireland, there's often a lot of supernatural happenings. Like a monster might show up or something on Samhain. But it wasn't always necessarily death. But at the same time, since we see this repeated over and over again, the idea of death, we see it with the Catholic holidays and we see it with Day of the Dead.
Yep.
Obviously, there's just something.
There's something in that time. Well, I mean, and we say the veil is the thinnest and you can contact your dead ancestors. And so, it's someone said that the Halloween, a good book on Halloween history, Lisa Morton's Trick or Treat, A History of Halloween.
Yeah. There's a couple of different good books on Halloween. There's Death. I'm right near the Jason holiday shelf. Yeah. There's Death Makes a Holiday, which is a really great book by David Scull. And then there's Halloween by Nicholas Rogers, which is also very good.
Cool.
And one of my favorite books is America's Favorite Holidays by, what's his name? I can't remember the author's name. It's not on the book, just to make me look stupid. Bruce Forbes, which
I think you referred to one of the workshops I attended when we were during pandemic. I think you referred to that book quite a bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of information in that book, and it's also does all the holidays, and it's pretty short and simple. But a lot of these things that we do today for almost all of our major holidays really have only evolved in the last 120 years, especially in the period after World War II, when everything kind of became codified a lot due to television, right? Where
the commercialization of it all.
Yeah.
Well, also you see how one person celebrates it, right? So you want to pick up on that, and then you do it that way, and then everyone else picks up slowly but surely.
Yeah.
And a lot of these traditions feel genuinely old.
They do.
But they may not be, right? They just feel so natural when we put them into a certain place. Yeah. And there's also a lot of traditions about dressing up at Christmas which I mentioned earlier. My favorite is probably the Newfoundland, Canada mumming tradition, where people would, if you're a little boy, you might wear your mom's clothes or something, with a pillowcase over your head, and then you go door to door and get invited in, and then people had to guess who you are, and people would ask you questions while you're dressed up, but instead of answering them like a normal person, you might talk like this. Right? And it was actually a practice that was banned for several decades because people used it as an opportunity to rob homes.
Of course they did.
Right? But now it's back. But
have you I've learned a lot about Yule from you, because I know you love Yule, and you've heard of the Yule lads, right?
Yes, Iceland. Yes.
We love the Yule lads. I know we went from Samhain to Yule, but this is how it goes because the wine flows and the thought process flows. But do you remember, because we were trying to remember what the Yule lads, there's like what, 12, 13 of them or something?
There's 13 Yule lads. There's sausage stealer and door slammer and
I can't remember. There's this
pillow.
I don't know, sock hider. I mean, I don't know. I'm just
I know that it is in my book, Llewellyn's Little Book of Yule, but I can't remember all of them right now.
Yeah.
But what's really fascinating about the Yule lads is a lot of that mythology comes directly from ancient Norse mythology. I mean, there's a very real line. Some of the characters who aren't the lads, their parents and stuff show up in Norse mythology, which I think is really great. To me, the most pagan of all the holidays is Yuletide. More so than Halloween. And
I agree with you, because the more that I'm diving into the Yule tradition, I'm just and then we have people in our coven that are obsessed with Yule. Celine, she loves it, so she's always reading about it and all the connections, and so
big Krampus fans as well.
Krampus fans, and so let's talk a little bit about Yule, because in your description you said you're decorating for Yule already a little too soon, and so that makes me laugh. What are some of the Yule traditions that you really enjoy, that you like, some of those stories and connections?
Maybe ones that you put into your tradition,
and maybe something that you practice.
I freaking love all of it, and about the time November 6th rolls around, that's when I start listening to carols, without any sort of shame at all.
I love that, because I love Christmas carols. I love going house to house and singing and drinking hot cider, and I want to bring that all back.
I mean, by August 6th or 7th, I usually probably slip one in every once in a while because I miss them so much. But I can't listen to a lot of them. It's just too much too soon. For me, I feel like I like to embrace all of it. As much of it as I can. There's certainly Krampus here. I got a nice new Befana ornament while I was in Italy, because that's where she's from.
I have one. I have one hanging on my wall over there. I keep her up all year long.
My favorite little weird tradition is the Cagner, who is a little Catalan peasant who poops at the manger scene of Jesus. And I got a new one while I was in Italy.
What is he called? What is it?
Cagner. The Cagner. Cagner. And it translates literally as the shitter. And you can go to certain parts of Spain and there'll be like a 2-foot tall one in a mall, like taking a dump. Right? Like it's a real thing, and people are like, why do people do this?
We have finally found your Yule decoration.
Yes. I love that.
And traditionally the Cagner has a certain look, but now that he's been converted into other figures. Like you can buy a Cagner Pope, or for a while you could buy a Cagner Barack Obama and other American political figures.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of different Cagners that you can buy, but they're always dropping trow and dropping a deuce.
Oh my God! Why don't I know this?
I have seen these figures to some degree, but I did not know they were known as Cagners.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the things about writing a book that is so much fun, is that you learn way too much about things. So, and then all of a sudden your wife's like, why do half of the Christmas decorations poop now? And that would be why, because in some areas the Christmas decorations take dumps, right?
Well, yep. You have now inspired our Yule, so
you've inspired us. We
will be shopping for a Cagner probably later this evening.
Yes, I am. I want to share with our audience because I can put this up on the screen because this is just delightful to me. Yeah, I need to share this image. There it is. Sorry. Does anyone?
Yeah, that's him right there. That's like that's the common one that you can buy, I think, on Amazon pretty easily.
Oh my God. This is amazing. You have no idea what you have opened. Yeah, you have no idea what you have opened up in my life right now, Jason Mankey, because that is like
kindred spirit. Anything
anything about poop makes me laugh, and there's actually a Yule thing for it. So yeah, the Cagner, love it.
And I have like a traditional manger scene. I mean, in my manger scene, the wise men look like they're trees growing out of the earth, and so do Joseph and Mary, which I think makes it look cool. But I put other weird things around it, including the Cagner, and I usually put a statue of Horus there. The Horus has nothing to do with Christmas, but there are bad memes every year about, Horus was born on December 25th and Horus had 12 apostles. None of that crap is true, but I still think it's funny. So I put Horus there, and I put Donkey from Shrek there, and and my Cagner.
We have black metal Jesus. Yeah, it is. He's all like, it looks like black metal, death metal, and we put that near our Yule tree, our Christmas tree, and so we're on the same wavelength. It's a time to just celebrate. But we also do the what are the horses? The
Mary Lloyds.
The Mary Lloyds.
Oh yeah. The Welsh tradition, right?
Yeah. I love that whole thing with the Mary Lloyds.
And we think Mary Lloyd.
And I would also suggest, if anybody's interested in Mary Lloyd, if you go to YouTube, you can see some of the videos from the 50s where they would film people doing it in a very traditional way, where they go door to door. Yes. And the Mary Lloyd asks the questions and people respond and all that. One of the things about American Yuletide traditions is we've got rid of everything that was cool, right? We got rid of all the other gift givers. It's just bloody Santa Claus. We got rid of all of the cool holidays and traditions that happened after Christmas, with the exception of New Year's.
Yeah.
If you go into Target December 28th, all the decorations are usually even down by then.
Yeah.
And for years in Europe, the highlight of the holiday season was not Christmas. That was the start. It wasn't even New Year's. It was 12th night on January 5th.
Yep.
And then that was the highlight, because on the 6th you had to go to church. So the 5th was your last night to party like a rock star.
Yeah.
And and so it's like this extended period of heavy drinking and eating and fornicating and gambling and giving presents, and it just sounds so good. And in America, we just jettisoned all of that fun stuff.
Is this, I might be wrong, is this around the time, I think I might be wrong, Saturnalia? Is that around that time, or?
Saturnalia is an ancient Roman holiday, and Saturnalia had a huge impact on Christmas. The people who celebrated Saturnalia became Christians, but Saturnalia was the party. And when all of a sudden you couldn't really celebrate Saturnalia, they took a lot of those traditions and just kind of added them to Christmas, and people decorated a certain way for the Saturnalia and did things like sing carols, and all of a sudden that got added to Christmas.
Yeah.
And in the early 19th century, though, you had a long tradition of people wassailing and going door to door, asking for money and things. I'll sing a song for you if you give me booze. And the emerging American middle class didn't like that tradition. Yeah. And worked very hard to change Christmas from a rowdy, drunken bacchanalia to a holiday built around family and home and children.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, what had been this big party sort of got changed into something that happens in your own parlor.
and it turned into celebrating the birth of Christ, and so it became this very holy day.
But as we all know, everything goes in cycles. So let's start this cycle, bring it back the other way around.
Yeah, right.
even during most of the Christian period, it was loud and drunken.
Yeah,
it wasn't really. Yeah, for like over 1,000 years, even during the Christian period, it was loud and drunken. Only in the last 200 years has it kind of slowed down.
Yeah,
and even then, I would argue we've just sort of moved a lot of those traditions to New Year's Eve, or maybe the office Christmas party. I've never been to an office Christmas party, but I think we're of an age when we were growing up, we always heard stories like somebody mimeographed their butt at the Christmas party, and they would hook up in the closet, right? That's very
Saturday for that. Yeah. I told you it was not going to happen again.
You were at our work Christmas party. That's what happened.
And that's how I got her. I sent her that fax.
He sent me that copy machine of the copy of his butt. What got you into researching Sabbats and history? Are you just a history buff by nature, or what? How did this happen with you? What's
Definitely
wrong with Jason Mankey? No, just kidding. No,
everybody needs hobbies, and football's only on 4 times a week. So I've always been interested in holidays because I love when things are not. Normal's not the right word, but when mundanity sort of get flips around, right? Like special days, when people decorate for something, or you get a card in the mail or whatever. So researching the origins of those holidays has been something I've been interested in since I was in the 5th grade, maybe even earlier than that. So it's been an ongoing interest and concern of mine. And there's so much misinformation about holidays out there.
Yes.
I love holidays, but I dread social media during holidays, because so much of it's wrong. And I don't think it's intentionally wrong. It's just that an idea gets said, and then it gets repeated and repeated and repeated. And then somehow that becomes a fact. And it's not a fact. It's just, a mistake that somebody made along the way. But people like that, one of my favorites that's totally wrong is Santa and mushrooms and reindeer, which you hear sometimes. So, the idea that Siberian shamans inspired Santa Claus, and Santa Claus flies with reindeer because the shamans would eat mushrooms and they'd have a psychedelic trip, and the mythology.
That could have happened. A shaman might have eaten mushrooms and hallucinated that he was flying on reindeer, but that happened to me last Saturday. No, just kidding.
Yeah. The problem with a lot of this, though, is like if you look at the times when a certain tradition is established, it doesn't line up.
It doesn't match.
Reindeer weren't associated with Santa until the 1790s, so it would have been long after the Santa figure had already been established.
Yeah,
the reindeer were sort of a more contemporary addition, and nobody knows exactly why somebody decided reindeer, but they were there. But for a long time, it was a horse before that. So. If you look at history, you can see sort of what's false and what's not false, but some of the theories are still fun, and I get why people are attracted to them. The mushroom thing was especially big in the 60s and 70s when psychedelic culture was catching up.
That's believable that they would think of that. You've just 5th grade. I mean, in 5th grade, I was listening to Duran Duran and playing with Barbies, and you were researching history of holidays and stuff. Did you ever
playing with my Masters of the Universe figures and listening to Duran Duran, but I was also doing this other thing too.
Yeah. I was actually researching, and it was in 5th grade or 5th grade. I was researching demonic possessions and if they were real, or if it was a mental illness. So I can't really give you a hard time for researching history on stuff, because I literally was looking up demonic possessions at the library.
I was playing Tetris.
I read all those books too. I grew up loving Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. Right next to those books were like the demonology books, and the witchcraft books, and the vampire and the werewolf books. I was reading all that stuff as well. I mean, that stuff was great. It was fun.
Oh, loved it. When I was 18 or 17 or 18, I remember, I'm looking at it right now. Uncle Bucky's book of witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sneak read it when my mom and I would go to this New Age bookstore, because she liked the angel books and that stuff, because she's very Christian, and so she thought that all this angel stuff was very Christian. And I would sit in the back of the store, and that big blue book of witchcraft just drew me in, and I would sneak read it. And the lady that owned the bookstore, she would see me come in and sneak read it, and then when I come in with my friends, she's like, the book's back there, you can still read it. She was very sweet, and I was like, oh, cool, so yeah.
It's great that you bring up Uncle Bucky's Big Blue Book, as I've been spending a lot of time with Buckland the last couple of years. Of course, he passed away in 2017, but I've been writing his biography, which will be out May 3rd.
And what's the name of that book, Jason? Can you remember? Man. I've got it. I've got it right here.
It's called High Priest Raymond Buckland, Father of American Witchcraft.
Yes. And it's coming out when?
It comes out May 3rd.
I've got here on May 8th, but
maybe it's May 8th. It's probably May 8th. Yeah, it's something like that. It's May.
Yeah.
A 3 and an 8 look a lot alike. And when I found out the publication date, I found out by looking at Amazon, because Llewellyn doesn't tell me these things, while on my phone on vacation, probably after having too much wine. So
yes,
you can see my confusion.
What does too much wine mean? This makes no sense to me. I don't know what that means.
Usually it means 2 bottles for Jason and some grappa. That's usually what it means.
Well, there's where you went
wrong.
What
is that?
Is when you go to grappa.
What's grappa?
Gasoline.
Grappa is an Italian-style brandy that is made from the sticks and the stems and the seeds and the leaves of grapes after they make wine.
Oh, okay.
And leftovers, they raw distill it and don't age it, and it comes out raw and hot and clear and semi-grape flavored, but a whole
lot some grape flavor to it.
Yeah.
But after you get past the burn, then you get a little flavor. But it's the burn that you taste mostly up front.
So a couple of restaurants we went to in Italy, like they'll give you free grappa when you finish your meal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we would get some grappa, and Gwen and Phoenix both hated it and couldn't drink it.
Yeah.
But I kind of looked at it as a challenge. And would drink it at the end of meals. And one particular restaurant we went to, like they were all getting dessert, and I'm not a dessert person, and I was full, but I was like, I'll just have some grappa so I can partake in something while they're eating their tiramisu or whatever it was. And the waiter asked me, what kind of grappa do you have? Like, we have it from red grapes and white grapes. And I said, it's up to you. And he goes, I will never drink grappa. So it wasn't much help.
I will never drink it, but here, have some.
Yeah, but I'm happy to sell it to you for €8. So
your Brunello grappas are your best, but Brunellos are also your best of your Italian wine. So the grappas that come made from Brunellos, the Brunello grape or Sangiovese grape from Brunello, is going to be your best option. But it's still hot.
Yeah,
the flavor's there, but you got to get past the burn.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Phoenix LaFay called it gasoline the whole trip.
Yeah, that does not sound enjoyable.
It's kind of like white whiskey or moonshine, but with grapes.
Yeah, and when I went to Greece, they serve ouzo in parts of Greece.
Yeah,
which is very
delicious. I love.
Is that the licorice?
Yeah, I love ouzo.
Yeah,
in Sambuca, but
any of those weird distilled spirits, I'm always down for. It makes me feel closer to the area that I'm visiting. At least that's how I like to justify it.
So you've been spending the last couple of years working on this. You worked on the book about Raymond Buckland. Is that your usual time to write a book?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, what made this was just lots of. Is this your first book you've written on a person?
I've never written a biography before, and I will never write another biography again.
What made you want to do this?
I didn't. Llewellyn asked me if I would do it, and I looked at it as a challenge. And I also think Raymond Buckland is sort of one of the biggest figures in American witchcraft. He's had a very big influence on what a lot of us do, and so I thought I'd give it a go.
Yeah.
But it's a real challenge. It's a very different sort of process writing a biography. And I'm not somebody who really likes interviewing lots of people. Most people think that I'm this hugely gregarious, outgoing person, and talking to strangers you've never met about a person is sort of strange and unsettling.
Yeah.
So it took a while to get past that, and I also just had a really busy travel schedule for a lot of that time too, because things were canceled for years and then it all hit at once.
Absolutely.
So it was a really different experience, but I found out some really cool things in the process of writing the book, and there's some parts of it that I think will be of interest to people who are big Wiccan history nerds.
Okay.
People always ask me things like, how exciting was his life? And as a writer myself, I can tell you that our lives are mostly not very exciting. Because you don't make a lot of money writing.
No.
And Raymond Buckland didn't make a lot of money writing during a lot of his life. He had regular jobs. That's how he paid his rent. He lived in small apartments because life is expensive, right? And so he didn't get to have maybe as many adventures as some people might think. However, because I think modern witchcraft, especially in North America, is really reliant on books, and especially in the 70s, 80s, and up through the 90s, that our early writers have huge influence on what a lot of us do, probably outsized influence. And Ray wrote 50 books, so he had a lot of influence.
I didn't know 50 books. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and some of them are better than others. I'll tell you that straight up. But the Big Blue Book, though, is a book that had tremendous impact. On a lot of witches.
It's a staple of old style American witchcraft.
Yeah,
and it still sells really well. I remember the first time I went to Salem, Massachusetts in 2021. Some stores still had entire shelves of just the Big Blue Book. And a lot of books it's contemporary with have changed covers over the years, and look very, very different. The Big Blue Book remains a big blue book with a pentagram in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I said, that was the one that kind of like, it was like, a deer or a moth to a flame. I mean, I saw that Big Blue Book and that pentagram and I just went, what is this? And I mean, that's where I was first introduced to witchcraft.
It's clearly iconic, right? Yes. And you can, every once in a while on TV, you still see it and things because it's still in bookstores and it's still a bestseller all these years later. My wife has a really great story about the Big Blue Book. Like her parents, her stepfather and her mother, very committed Catholics, would have been horrified to know that their high school daughter was becoming a witch. And she checked out the Big Blue Book from local library.
Yeah.
And they're watching Cops one night. And what book was to show up during Cops? The Big Blue Book, right? And the stepfather and her mother both commented on it. Oh, look at that Satan trash or whatever. Yep. And Ari slowly walked up to her room and then hid it in a drawer and took it back to the library that next day just in case. Because once you see it, it's in your brain forever.
It is.
You become aware. You're unaware until you're aware.
Yes, right? and that's the thing that was so, because in the 80s when I was a teenager, there in that New Age shop, there was just a display of maybe 10 or less. It was the witchcraft section, and it was like a little island in the back. And it was not a whole lot of books, but that was the main one that was like, hello, pentagram. Yeah.
When Llewellyn was deciding what that book was going to look like, and I got to look at a lot of the production notes for the Big Blue Book, which was one of my favorite parts of writing the biography. They actually talked to B. Dalton booksellers and Walden Books to make sure that the book wasn't too large and that it would fit on their shelves and they would be comfortable selling the book, because because of its workbook like size, they were unsure whether or not, and they were like, no, it's fine. We'll put it on the shelf.
Well, it was a beacon. It was a beacon for a lot of my witchy friends when we were teenagers. It is what drew us in. We're coming up to the top of the hour. I want to, again, we could have you come back and talk about so many more things, but the ATC, Aquarian Tabernacle Church, does their spring mysteries every year in April. Yep. And I heard that you will be there doing a Dionysus revel. Can you tell us, for those that don't know what a revel is, what is a Dionysus revel, and how are you? I don't know what is a Dionysus revel? We love Dionysus.
I don't know if this is actually, if my ritual is a revel or not. It's
that's
just
what I was told.
It's just ecstatic. It's just about praising the God. It's about a ritual that is not something that you watch. It's something that you participate in.
Yeah.
It's an experience, not a visualization.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think when people do large group ritual, it's really hard to do something that includes everybody.
It is.
And also we have sort of these expectations that we're going to be polite while we do ritual, that maybe we're not going to say 4-letter words during ritual, or no one would ever encourage everyone to show up with a bottle of wine at the ritual.
Exactly.
And then there are rituals that Jason does where there are lots of 4-letter words, and he wants everybody to yell and scream during the ritual. And if you happen to walk in with a glass of wine, that's great.
Yeah.
And if you don't drink wine, that's great too, because no one will ever be forced or coerced into doing such things. I take all that seriously. But ritual should be fun and ecstatic, and Dionysus is an ecstatic god.
Yeah.
So over the last 5 or 6 years, I've gotten really into doing these sort of rituals for Pan and for Dionysus. And I thought this was going to be a Pan ritual, but they ended up choosing Dionysus, which is great and is fine.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I'm going to do. When I went to the Spring Mysteries for the first time 2 years ago, there really wasn't a lot of Dionysus there.
Yeah.
And also there really wasn't the ecstatic ritual kind of beforehand that I thought that there should be. So one of the nice things about being me is, like, if I give somebody a suggestion, they do listen to it. And so all of a sudden I got roped into doing this ritual. So,
well, maybe that's the reason why we need to go.
Yeah, we might have to attend this year's,
or next year's. Yeah.
This upcoming one.
Yeah. We have not we've gone to Spring Mysteries numerous times,
but we have not done the hotel experience.
Hotel experience we have.
I went as I said, I went 2 years ago, and I think that might have been one of the first hotel experiences. Yeah. And it's a great hotel, and I had a really great time. As I told Bella, the only thing that was rough is the first bit of the mysteries happens way too early in the morning for me.
Yeah.
And I was just told that that's never going to change, and to get over myself. But other than that,
all of us.
I really had a terrific time.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to going back. And I love the hotel experience. I'm too old to camp now. Yeah. I like having my own room. I like being able to close the door and hide from people when I need to hide from people. And you get to do that. And if it rains, your whole weekend isn't ruined. It's great.
Well, we have been known. That's why we do the disclaimer at the beginning. If you don't like to watch witches drink wine and talk about witchy stuff, then click the X. We have a reputation, even though we are children of the crossroads, and we are our patron gods are Hecate and Pan. Dionysus has always been with us, and we became known as the fun party coven at Spring Mysteries. Like, if you want to do the after hours hanging out, we always had all the wine, the music, the partying, and so that would be really fun in a hotel room. We're not going to get like all rock star. Oh my God, that's what we were going to talk about. We got to talk about that next time.
Yep.
Is the occult in rock music? Can you tell us real quick? Is it about bands that practice the occult, or
So I have been known to do workshops on heavy metal in the occult and Led Zeppelin in the occult at various festivals. And it's about looking at sort of the imagery behind a lot of these bands and their lyrics and how they've impacted occult practices, whether or not they were actually occultists. A band like Black Sabbath, people are always thought that they were devil worshippers. I mean, there are lyrics in there that are really Christian if you know where to look. Right? I mean, most of the songs were about like, don't do this. This is real and it's going to get you in trouble. But nobody wants to talk about that. But I love talking about that stuff. And, Coven, which was the first real satanic band.
I love that band. Yeah.
Oh, their first album is like listening to Harper Valley PTA, but with Satan. I mean, it's not heavy metal. I find it actually kind of funny. And then the farmer worshiped Satan, and it's kind of sing-songy in places.
Yes. Harper
but
Valley.
The imagery of it was so influential.
Woody Guthrie.
What's that?
It's Woody Guthrie meets a cult.
It kind of is.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Some of those songs you could probably do on the Muppet Show back in the day. It really works for that.
It's so true. I just discovered Coven probably like 5 or 6 years ago. I was just like, who is this band? They're called Coven. Like, pretty awesome.
It's one thing that's great though is in the age of the internet, almost all music's available in a way that it wasn't, just 10, 15, 20 years ago. And like for a long time, that original Coven record was out of print. It was almost impossible to get. Maybe you could find it like on a bootleg server or somewhere. But in the age of LPs, if you wanted to buy it, you couldn't because no one had ever re-released it on disc or cassette or anything.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started looking into this, I couldn't find the Coven record. And now everybody can find it. Like all the songs are on YouTube. Yeah, you can stream it on whatever you stream music on. Yeah. And Coven tours the country. Jinx Dawson, the lead singer, put together a new version of Coven and she goes out and tours and things. Wow. 50 now we're looking at almost 50 years after the fact. I think she was a realtor in Indianapolis for a while, right? Because her music career didn't last particularly long, though Coven had a top 40 song at one point, though all the satanic elements were gone by then.
Yeah.
But it's nice though. Like a lot of these bands are getting a second chance and a second look. Pentagram's another one of those bands.
Yep. Yeah. I started looking into these kind of bands because I was doing for the ATC on TikTok, the Pagan Information Network, and I was the entertainment reporter, I guess, because they would bring news, pagan news, and then astrology news, and I was the entertainment person. So I was like, I want to look up some of these like old bands that were associated with paganism and so I came across Pentagram and Coven and some of the soundtrack to The Wicker Man. There was a lot of cool songs on there that I listened to, and I loved all that stuff. So
if the soundtrack to The Wicker Man had come out when the movie was released and they didn't release a soundtrack of it for over a decade, I think that the songs we would sing at pagan festivals would probably be all of the songs from The Wicker Man.
Yeah,
but they never released the soundtrack when the movie came out.
I didn't know that.
People couldn't get those songs, right? I mean, and back then in the 70s, people didn't even have a VCR, so you really couldn't, stop and play it. It wasn't until satellites in the 80s and cable where people were now all of a sudden able to really watch this movie over and over again.
Yeah.
And kind of pick up on the songs.
I'm very much a movie soundtrack person too. So when I had seen The Wicker Man several times, but I actually presented it on my Discord server for a movie night because there were so many people that hadn't seen the original one. They saw the Nicolas Cage one.
There's only one version of that movie that has ever been made.
Yes.
In an alternative universe, apparently there's a second one, but we're not going to talk about that.
We don't talk about that.
Sadly enough, it does not take place in Washington State.
Yeah. But The Wicker Man, we watched it probably a couple of years ago on one of my online movie nights, and I was listening to the music and I'm like, I'm going to look the soundtrack up. So I just looked it up on Spotify and started listening to it. And I love it. I love it. It's so good. There is only one, like the high.
Yeah. There can be only one.
There can only be one. Yeah.
My wife absolutely hates the soundtrack to The Wicker Man, so when we want to piss her off, we just like corn rigs and barley rigs. You know?
As he looks down the hall, she's not listening, is she?
She is not home, so I can say that tonight.
Well, oh my gosh, we are past our hour. Jason, would you be willing to come back a third time and we can talk about more stuff, like when your book comes
I haven't
out?
been on a podcast in over a year, so I really miss the sound of my own voice. So I'm happy.
We miss the sound of your voice.
I'm happy to come back.
So we're going to do our little spiel here. So we, as a coven, we are a nonprofit. We do all of this because the goddess has asked us and led us to do these things. But we do appreciate if people can donate to our coven. We do have a Venmo. It's pretty easy. It's a lot of letters. It's just go to Venmo, COTC-ATC. That's Children of the Crossroads ATC. And it's right there on Venmo. And we have a PayPal. Same thing. It is PayPal me, COTC-ATC. That kind of rhymes. PayPal me, COTC-ATC. And it's not required, but it's greatly appreciated. We also have a Discord channel where we are very active online. It's also in the description of the YouTube show. We have our link down there. Come join our Discord. We do a lot of stuff. We just had a past life regression workshop. We've got a Baba Yaga workshop coming up. In an hour, we have an online full moon and Aries ritual coming up. So we would love to see people.
We have daily services in the morning.
Yeah, we do a lot on that. And of course, if you ever want to get a hold of us, if you ever want an idea like, oh, this would be a great guest, or hey, can you talk about this wine? Or even asking us, why do you do what you do? You can email us at
crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
So Jason Mankey, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a good time. We had such a great time talking about
this. Was awesome. This was a really great conversation, and now I want to go put up my Yule decorations, but I
do it
3 weeks.
You kind of inspired me to do the same.
I love Halloween though too. So I mean, I'm keeping up the orange lights for.
Well, our house looks like Halloween all year long. Like I've had my sister came into this house one time and she said, like it was in like July or April or something. And she goes, "Oh my God, you have your Halloween decorations up so early," and I'm like, "This is our house." So, well, thank you everyone for joining us. And remember, please be so kind to one another and always walk with the goddess. And until next time, blessed be. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Blessed be.
Thank you for joining us.
Smile, smile, smile.